I would like to call together call to order the Monday, October 7th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Wood. Here. Alder Kuhr. Here. Alder Thomas. Here. Alder Groupie. Here. Alder Moore. Here. Alder Kitzlar. Here. Mayor O'Connor.
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the September 16th and 25th meetings?
So moved.
Second. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have 3 people who would like to speak tonight. First up would be Larry Reed of 5602 Winnequa Road. Larry, if you'd like to come up to the podium, would like to speak in favor and register in favor of both the ambulance fee and the ambulance fee change and the changing the bay name. Is that correct, Larry?
Yes.
Yeah. So you could state your name and address again.
I am Larry Reed. I live at 5602 Winnequa Road. And I'll just be able to say that I support the change in the ambulance fees, and I support the change in the name of the lake. I think, in my opinion, the word squaw is a pejorative term, and we should try to get away from those kinds of terms when we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Maryanne Reed, who would also like to speak about the name change.
Maryanne Reed, 5602 Winnequa Road, Monona. I've lived 64 of my 65 years in the city of Monona. This name change, which I support, is long overdue. I cringe when people ask me what Winnequa means after I've spelled it for them. It's a hurtful term to refer to a Native woman, a First Nations woman this way. I've known that since the mid-'70s when I took a Wisconsin history class. When you know better, you do better. I'm sure not everybody realizes that, and if you permit me, I'm going to tell a little story that my mom told me about herself. She was born 1918 in a house near where the Catfish River entered Fourth Lake. We know that today as the Yahara River entering Lake Mendota. So there's been prior names for these bodies of water. The Ho-Chunk had names for them before the white people ever came to this area. She told me that when she said she was embarrassed that she had finished high school and didn't know that African American people did not like the N word and Italian American people did not like the W word. She said, I went to East High. We used that as part of our cheers and part of our songs when we played Central. She said, I didn't know any better. So to the people here, I'm glad that once people acknowledge that they know better, that they will do better. So I support this change wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next appearance is Kathy Cara, who would like to speak against changing the name.
Kathy Carr, 4713 Toniawaka Trail, Monona. I would like to say that I have lived most of my life in areas with important connections to Indian history. Oshkosh, Lake Butte-Moore, Monona, and the Finger Lakes of upstate New York, never having heard a negative connotation of the word squaw until it was brought up here in 2005. And I sympathize with the comment in Sonny Schubert's column that we should get around that and just forget this and go back to what should be an honorable word. The book I have in my hand belongs to the Monona Library. The Romance of Wisconsin Place Names by Robert E. Gard and L.G. Sorden. Both of them were professors in the College of Agriculture at the University of Wisconsin. And Gard, in particular, is known for the Wisconsin idea and the fact that this book from 1968, at the time that it was written and published, in the cover, it says that he came to Wisconsin in 1945, where he founded and still directs the Wisconsin Idea Theater, which is devoted to indigenous culture. He wrote more than 30 books, most of which are about Wisconsin. And I particularly like the first sentence in the book jacket. The soul of Wisconsin is mirrored in her place names. They reflect her people, her history, her traditions, the nature of her land. I want to read you 2 entries in this book, which I believe constitute good reasons to retain the name of Squab. The first one, Monona in Dane County. The name appears to be of Indian origin, but there is some conjecture as to what it means. In the Winnebago language, it is said to mean lost or stolen or teepee lake. The Potawatomi word, similar to this, meant wild rice. The Sauk Fox Indians had a similar word that meant superwoman, quote unquote, a mythical person of supernatural powers who presided over the wigwam. However, most authorities claim it is a word meaning beautiful, and that was first used to describe the lake. Now, back in the day when we were fighting for different causes or against different things, like the subdivision of the Borod property, my neighbor, Jeannie Hynum, would say, Monona means beautiful in the Indian language. And we loved that, but we just never knew to which Indian language was one referring. Then we get to a second entry. The largest Winnequa Point, that's W on both ends, Dane County, the largest of the Winnebago Indian villages located about the Madison Lakes, was situated on the southeast shore of Lake Monona at a place then known as Squaw Point or Strawberry Point. Captain Barnes of steamboat fame called it Winnequa, a name he made up from Indian syllables. There's a tradition there. There are decades, there are almost 2 centuries of tradition with that area being known as Winnequa. And I would just like to say there are many points on Lake Monona where you run into muskrats, all the way from 4405, where they were quite a nuisance for dear friends of mine. I've encountered them at the boat launch site on both Toniawatha and Winnequa Trail. But there is only one Squaw Bay, and I think we should respect this tradition. It's been here for so long, and retain the name. Thank you.
We have also received 2 emails about this issue. One was from Mary Murrell, I think, of 5701 Winnequa Road in favor of the change, and the other from Sonny Schubert of 6107 Winnequa Road against the change. So, thank you all for coming and speaking. Let's see, move on to the consent agenda. There's no public hearing. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Under unfinished business, item 1A, consideration of resolution 19-9-2372, approval to apply for a Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources urban forestry grant put forth by the city administrator. Is there a motion to approve this?
Second.
City Administrator Gatto?
I have nothing to add from our previous discussion, unless you have any questions.
Questions, anyone? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item, consideration of Resolution 9-19-720 requiring a three-way stop controlled intersection at Frostwoods Road and Bridge Road put forth by the Public Works Committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Second.
Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. Since this was introduced at the Public Works Committee on September 4th, in the first reading on September 16th, we have had nobody contact us, no additional concerns for this request.
Anyone have any questions? Alder Kitzler?
Does that mean you contacted the property owner that has that driveway that pops out
We
there?
did not contact them.
Okay.
They have a U-shaped driveway.
Okay.
They have another entrance on Frostwoods.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Next item, 1C, consideration of ordinance 9-19-721, amending section 152-1A, Pren 1 of the fees, fines, and penalties schedule regarding ambulance transport fees put forth by the fire chief.
Move approval.
Second.
Scott?
This is second reading, correct?
Yes.
So nothing's changed since the last point. We're looking at increasing these so that we're more in line with our surrounding communities. This will help with the tight budget that we've got going forward. So.
Any questions, anyone? Hearing none, all...
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could reiterate, since I certainly recognize the need to be more in line with other communities, but I'm wondering if you could reiterate what the options are for individuals that, residents especially, that might have a difficult time coming up with the resources in one fell swoop, given that this represents a substantial increase.
Okay. Medicare and Medicaid, this doesn't really affect. So the federal government sets the guidelines on how much we can actually charge for Medicare and Medicaid patients.
Right.
They get that no matter what we are charging. That's all we get reimbursed.
Okay.
We can't charge them above and beyond that.
Right.
Anybody that has difficulties that meets the poverty level can put in for a request for a hardship waiver.
Okay.
And they can submit that through the billing company. The billing company then submits it to myself. I usually then get with the finance director, and we see if the paperwork all aligns, and if they do qualify for it, then they do get a waiver on the fees.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alder Thomas?
Correct me if I'm wrong. If we do mutual aid in another community that charges more, which most do, we charge our rate.
Correct.
So they're paying less if we transport them than they're paying to their own community.
Right.
The same thing happens if another community comes and does mutual aid here. If they charge a higher rate, they pay what they charge, not what we pay. So it seems unfair.
Right.
And as we talked about at the meeting, we're leaving money on the table.
Right.
And if people don't have the capacity to pay, there's a remedy for that as well.
Right.
So.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I was just, again, wanting him to
Yep.
reiterate those remedies so that so that the community fully understands, since does represent a big leap.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next item, consideration of resolution 19-9-2373, supporting Dane County application to change the name of Squab put forth by Alders Coor, Groupie, and Moore. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move. Second.
Did anyone want to speak?
I just have
Alder Groupie?
Is that okay?
Sure.
So one of the things that's been brought up is just making sure that our voices as white individuals are not overshadowing those of the Ho-Chunk with whom we've collaborated throughout this process. And in that spirit, I just wanted to share some remarks from a Wisconsin Distinguished Lecture Series that I attended on the 23rd. The Reeds were there, and this was called The Indigenuity and Dejope, a discussion with Samantha Skenendorf, who is a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, a UW alumna, former Associate Justice for the Ho-Chunk Nation Supreme Court, and an expert in federal Indian law and tribal law. So her talk served to launch more than a year of special campus events related to a new heritage marker on Bascom Hill titled Our Shared Future. And the marker, which was dedicated in June, acknowledges the land as the ancestral home of the Ho-Chunk people, who call the area Tejope, which means Four Lakes. So asked during the Q&A after the talk to speak to the power of renaming things to the native name, Skenendorf said, "Before there's the power of it, you have to acknowledge the colonial dominant side of it. Colonial culture says, if I can't pronounce your name, if it doesn't rhyme with Smith, you don't matter. I'm not going to learn your name." Language is so important. Language is culture. Naming is really a revitalization tactic. It's a way to take back. When you sit down with a tribe and they talk about a space and then give it a name, it's never anything boring. It's a very meaningful name, a well thought out and purposeful name, and has so much more meaning than the English language can usually translate for you. If you ask them to explain it, they kind of hesitate often. They'll tell you the way that they explain places. It's so beautiful to see them speak their own language. She continued that, to me, is a very special way that we share a space and we revitalize those meanings. We can say Monona, but we don't really know what Monona means. Those names have power and they also connect you, and they're not foreign. And that's the biggest problem we can ever make, is when we go anywhere in this world, is to look at a word that we can't pronounce and dismiss it. That's the biggest mistake you'll make, because you will not be connected, you will not grow, and in fact, you're doing the opposite. You're purposefully not growing, you're becoming smaller when you do those things. So naming that body of water and restoring that name and its power is very powerful. And then she also added, muskrat is my favorite meat. One of the Tejope's biggest delicacies is the muskrat in the area. You're missing out. So for those who have the concern about the rodent name, it remains one of the delicacies for the Ho-Chunk people. And I'm very pleased to share those remarks because I think it gives us more respect for this process and the power that it holds.
Alder Moore, did you?
Yeah, as a number of council members already know, most especially Molly and Jennifer, I have spent a good deal of time with various members of the Ho-Chunk Nation and citizens, Ho-Chunk citizens, discussing this topic, and I wanted to share an email among the folks that I spent a considerable amount of time with was Bill Quackenbush, who's the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Ho-Chunk Nation and also Cultural Resources Manager, and Janice Rice, who's a tribal member, former outreach coordinator for the college library at UW-Madison, past president of the American Indian Library Association, and former archivist for the Ho-Chunk people. And I wanted to, and in fact, Bill Quackenbush was kind enough to dig back through his records when we first started discussing this, because he honestly couldn't recall when it was first discussed in 2005 what the Ho-Chunk had recommended for a name, and so he dug back through his records and also reached out to those individuals that were members of the traditional court, the nation's traditional court, and he sent me the following email. You'll hopefully see the reference of this location for the Ho-Chunk is Wachowak Bay. This translates to Muskrat Bay, as given by James Greendeer and others of the Ho-Chunk Nation traditional courts. This would be what we, Ho-Chunk Nation, would endorse and support if requested. The term Squab Bay is offensive and needs to be addressed. When the Ho-Chunk Nation was first requested to offer their input to this matter in 2005, we had assumed the renaming of the bay had taken place. As you know, the naming of a bay could be many, as suggested, but the name of Wachowak is what the bay is known for us. We were asked in 2005 and again now in 2019, and this is what the nation has determined to offer and support. I I understand that at the time that whoever named the bay at the time that it was named, I understand that it may not have been intended to be offensive. We also understand that there are some that think that in some ways it was meant to honor Sarah Wood, but as Bill has very clearly stated, squaw is offensive for whatever reason. It's become offensive. It is offensive, and I think that this is a name that not only erases that offense, but honors the ancestral land and the place that Ho-Chunk had here.
Anyone else? Doug?
Well, I wanted to quote a little bit from the email we received from Mary Morrell, who, among other things, has a PhD in cultural anthropology. She writes, "As an anthropologist, I'm sensitive to both the historical complexity and power of language. The derogatory meanings of squaw combine both racism and sexism into one word. These meanings arose from its use as an English word," her emphasis, "after it was borrowed from the Algonquin in the 17th century." And she attached a PDF of the full entry for squaw from the Oxford English Dictionary, which she notes is an authoritative historical dictionary of the English language. And Oxford English Dictionary has several different definitions, one of which is 1A, a North American Indian woman or wife, now generally considered offensive. And B, used by people who are not North American Indian as a depreciative or disparaging term of abuse or contempt. And there are, it goes on, it's like 11 pages. But, I just wanted to reflect that there have been a lot of names for a lot of places in this area. Winnequa Point was not only named Winnequa Point, was also named Woods Point, was another name for it, for Abraham Wood. These place names do reflect our history, but in this case, it's not a pretty part of our history. To sexism and racism, I would add colonialism. There was a time in the early days of Wisconsin, beginning in the 1850s, when there were essentially no Indians left in southern Wisconsin because they had been forced out one way or another by the white European settlers. As she notes, squaw was an Algonquin word brought to Wisconsin possibly by the French, but ultimately applied to the bay by the Wisconsin settlers. And in doing that, the whites asserted the power to name not just Squaw Bay, but many other locations. And to me, I think it's clear that that does have a derogatory meaning, even if it was initially intended to honor a particular woman. That the attachment of that particular part of the story has been essentially lost for, I don't think there are very many people that would even be aware of that assertion. And moreover, I like the name. Could you pronounce it again, Aldermore?
Wachowak.
Wachowak, thank you. So, which was, I think, one of the mistakes we made in 2005 when we brought up the possibility of changing the names, that we didn't have a substitute, a new name for it at that time. But that's all I have to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Andy.
Alder Kitzler.
So I just want to logistically share, too, that we're not the body to officially change the name. That's at the county level. All we're doing is not to belittle what we're doing, but we're voting to support that resolution, and that effort and application to move it on up through the state and federal ranks that need to change the name. With a lot that's been said and that I've read in the paper and other things, I think generally, times change, just like when we're changing the mascots. It's time to change the name of this bay. What used to be okay in the past, whether that's the N-word or whatever it might have been that we thought might be okay to use, just obviously doesn't hold water in today's day and age. And so I think we're making those steps where necessary. If, looking it up and trying to do research and hearing what everybody says about what the meaning of squaw is, whether it's honor to women or what have you, I do think, generally there are better ways to honor women than keeping this derogatory name, which seems, if you Google it, the first thing that pops up is it's derogatory, and it comes up with a bunch of examples. So I just think if this is indeed a name to honor women, we have so many other ways to better honor women in today's day and age, and the resources that we have. And then, the final thing I'll just kind of say is, I want to thank all of the women that have led this effort from the city and the county level. I think that is saying a great deal. I think, the Ho-Chunk representation isn't all male. It's also women that are providing their input. And I think that speaks volumes to those that are leading this and why we're leading this and why, and who's leading it. And I think that's a statement for everybody to hear as well. So thanks.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to say one other thing with respect to Wachowak and what some people see as what I see is kind of disparaging the muskrat, which is that Zen masters would, I think, rightfully say that one of our biggest challenges as humans is that we understand the universe, but that we see the world as the universe and us, and that until we start to see ourselves as part of that universe, rather than separate from it, we'll continue to struggle in our relationship to the planet and to Mother Earth. And I dare say that that's one of the ways in which, in my experience, with Native Americans, there's a big difference, because their connection to the natural environment and to animals generally takes a different turn. And again, the muskrat, that name and the muskrat generally is highly revered among the Ho-Chunk in the Ho-Chunk Nation, and still celebrated annually at festivals, and dates back to the 1930s. When fur trapping and trading was very important to them. So while some people have referenced it in articles and other things as, terrible vermin in some way that somehow don't deserve to have something named after them, I just want to point out that in fact, like many other animals, including ourselves, they're part of a larger universe. And so I just would say that I think it's a very worthy name, and especially because it was generated by the nation themselves.
Anyone else? Alder Thomas.
Just a couple of general comments. It's sort of sad for me that, we took the land and we've taken their language, and we're changing this because we hijacked their word, and how sad that is. And something that was meant to honor a Native American woman is not going to be female related, and that's too bad. And that and I honor the name. They picked it. I wish I would have preferred they'd pick something that had honored a female, but maybe next go around we can do that.
Anyone else?
Sorry, I want to respond to that only because I have been in considerable discussions with Janice and with Deb Whitehorse and as I said, with Bill Quackenbush, and one of the things, again, that is helpful for us, I think, to know is that, for instance, one of the things that was, one of the possibilities that was brought up in one of the articles was naming it, Glory of the Morning Bay or something like that. And again, it's not a Ho-Chunk tradition in any way to be naming. It's a white thing to name places after individuals. It's definitely not a Ho-Chunk Nation thing to be naming places after individuals, and so they would see it, and they do in fact see it as that would not be appropriate. So it's not to say that something couldn't have come up that would related to women or their role there, but naming it after a particular individual, which was specifically recommended by somebody, I just want to say that part of the reason why that's not under consideration is that they would not see that as an appropriate thing.
And perhaps the males don't, but I've talked to some female Native Americans who do.
Okay. Anyone else? Jen?
I'll be brief. We wanted to do this, and in working with the Ho-Chunk and going to some of the events that we've had in Monona recently for the mound and for a dedication of an art sculpture on Monroe Street, I've been struck at the importance that the Ho-Chunk plays on being humble. So I humbly put forth this resolution in hopes that we can remedy a wrong that was done. Whether intentionally or not, it was a cultural appropriation of a word by white men, and we are humbly trying to fix it.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, new business, consideration of resolution 19-10-2374, approving the 2020-2024 capital improvements program and 2020 capital borrowing put forth by the mayor. I guess, should we go through each of these amendments, I think, and
Sure.
discuss them in Alderwood? They're all Alderwood's amendments. So, Doug, if you would like to start with the police office furniture, and then if anyone has any questions of any of the department heads, they're all here.
Yeah, well, so maybe it would be helpful to have the representatives of the department come up as we go through them.
Okay, Kurt and Sarah?
Yeah. So the first one is to add the request $4,500 for new office furniture. As described in the narrative, it's much of the office furniture is mismatched, broken collection of old furniture. There have been some upgrades. I'm not exactly sure which office this would be targeted to, or offices, so if you guys...
For the amendment?
Yeah.
What that would cover? That would cover the patrol lieutenant.
My office.
So, I know the whole idea was to, the patrol lieutenant, detective lieutenant, and chief's office are the three that have not had any upgrades. Well, ever since I've been there, I don't think. And so, currently Lieutenant Weagle's office has the oldest of the office furniture hand-me-downs that we've had.
Do you know, are the photographs that we have in the packet, are those from...
I believe those are from the chief's desk.
Okay. Okay. So
Questions? Anyone have any questions for them? Okay, thank you for coming.
thanks.
The next item would be...
Mayor, we
Yes.
usually do an approval of each amendment.
First
the
reading.
next
First
one.
reading.
This is the first reading.
Okay, all right.
Flooding restoration?
Yeah, so this was the original request by staff and the Parks Board for this amount was $25,000. So the amendment would move it back up to that amount, and it was the board's third priority. So Jay, can you talk about what?
Sure. So this project would be to take care of the areas that were impacted in the 2018 flooding. Unfortunately, due to the extremely wet spring, calendar of events with our other priorities, we didn't get to doing much restoration at all. Specifically, Birchhaven Circle, Graham Park, the west side of the lagoon, and Tecumseh Park. So these projects would be for turf restoration, shoreline restoration as needed, whether we contract it out or do it in-house with our staff. So the goal is to try to get at least the turf areas that were damaged significantly and continue to be damaged restored next year as much as we can. The concern is that we just don't have the available amount of city staff to be able to do it in-house, that we are going to have some assistance, and then look at what we can do with some shoreline improvements.
Elder Thomas?
So, did you have money in the budget to do it this year and you didn't get around to it?
No, we did not.
So
We
there
would
was-
just be doing normal, grass seeding and turf in-house. This money would be if we can do some shoreline improvements at some of the parks, which would cost money for materials, and then if we have to contract out any of the restoration.
So if you only had $10,000, would you still be able to do any of that, or?
It just depends what we want to do. If we're looking at just supply costs for topsoil and grass seed and some matting on some of the worst areas, we'll be able to do a couple of parks. If we are looking at doing shoreline improvements, let's say at Graham Park, that has very little shoreline right now at all as far as stabilization of that shoreline to increase the bank and do restoration, then we won't be able to do all of them. We'll have to kind of pick and choose with that money what we do.
So if you get $15,000, how much will it cost you to do Graham Park, for example?
Well, if we want to do the shoreline and we do it in-house, you're probably looking at $5,000 to $6,000. We're looking at kind of similar to what we did at the Cold Springs project there, as far as adding riprap and boulders and restoration. If it's just simply we're just going to reseed and add topsoil, then that's just it's just going to be on a square footage basis of what topsoil seed and matting would cost.
If we're going to add $15,000, I would like to see it like a regular budget item. I'd like to know what will be done and what can
Because
be.
that was my concern with this, is I thought we could take 10 to make an actual plan, because we really don't have a plan right now, right? I mean, it kind of depends on if any of this dries out. I know the west side of the lagoon hasn't dried all this summer.
We don't know how much it's going to take to do any of this.
I would think it's going to cost a lot more than 25.
Or how much you can do and what the priorities are. So I'd like to see what we want to accomplish for this money. Is that doable?
Well, yeah, certainly we can do that. I think we'd like to get the flood damaged turf areas restored as much as we can. And so that's why there was a variable amount. If we can do it ourselves, it's certainly not going to cost all that. If we have to contract some of it out in the interest of expediting the process and getting it done, then that's going to cost considerably more than if we do it with our own city staff.
I know when we talked about it, at one point you told me, well, you would at least be spreading grass seed at
Correct.
the various parks.
Yeah.
Now that.
Well, not going to happen. Not going to happen this year. We get
Right,
we get
exactly.
basically 2 shots at it. It's either the April, May.
But 10,000 is plenty for that, correct?
Well, yeah, that includes topsoil and renting out equipment to seed it in the matting. So it's not just grass seed. There is a little bit more to it. But that
Well,
won't
you
get
didn't explain
every
all that part of it.
correct.
too,
That
so.
won't get every park, for
Right.
$10,000. Certainly not the west side of the lagoon.
I like to know if we're spending money and people are saying, what are you spending this on? And I like to be able to tell them. So if you could give us, are you going to be able to do it? Are we going to contract it out? What are we going to do? A budget item. I've no problem if we need to do this to fix damage, but I'd like to see it as a budget item to explaining what and how. That's just my view of the world.
Andrew?
My 2 cents, and maybe this would have been, well, it was different when our committee did it because we didn't have all this flooding. I mean, my concern at this point is if we do the topsoil grass seed again, you know, next August, September, we're going to be sitting there with, you know, a couple inches of water anyways. So I guess my, you know, thinking was, I mean, if we add it, I think it would have to be directed towards certain parks so that we are doing this properly the first time, you know, doing riprap, all of that, just so that, you know, next year we don't have to buy another topsoil and seed. And I know it's hard to plan, and I think Birchhaven in particular is probably unique because I know there's low-lying properties around, and so it's not going to be quite as easy. So I mean, I'm supportive of adding, because I think Graham Park and some of these other parks could utilize that with maybe less engineering than maybe like a Birchhaven. But I would also be interested in your perspective of those kind of 3 parks that you mentioned here, or 3 or 4 areas. What is your priority? Would you prefer, you know, all 25 goes to Birchhaven because then you can do the design and riprap? Or I'm interested just in your perspective of that, because again, my base level is I would hate just to put another seed down, even if we did it at the right time, and then we're in the same position.
I think it's a little challenging because the neighborhoods and the people that use all of those parks have all had significant complaints this summer, you know, during the year about the status of standing water and mosquito breeding and, you know, unusable parts of the park. So even if it is a micro park and maybe not high on our overall priority list, it's still impacting some of our residents. And so, you know, are we going to keep having flooding every single year? We don't know. You know, we're now close to 100-year flood 2 years in a row. Could be another 10, 15 years, you know, starting next year. And if we don't at least try to restore them in some aspect, you know, we're going to forever kind of kick that can down the road on making longer-term improvements. I think we can, given weather conditions, you know, given what our staff time is or the assistance was contracted out, we can get some of those parks, the 3 that I mentioned, back to at least where they were before we had 2008 flooding. If I had, you know, my top priority is that the west side of the lagoon is increasingly getting more difficult to maintain each year. And so to be able to do something on that side would be my first priority, because we're taking our central park and essentially cutting, you know, a third of it, rendering it useless or unusable for people to use because it's so wet. But we also, as we've talked about, reach 64 and potential alternatives to meeting our stormwater permit. There's an impact on the lagoon and what we might do on that side too. So we're in the midst of a lot of moving parts as it goes to Winnequa. But that park certainly has seen, at least from my perspective, the most amount of changes in topography over the last 10 years, consistently from the high water table and some from the flooding. So whether it's walking through the park or trying to maintain it, it's very difficult. I think we can do Graham Park and Birchhaven and Tecumseh relatively inexpensively. The west side of the lagoon is going to be a bit more of a challenge.
Hadn't we talked about possibly berming Tecumseh? I think, Dan, you talked about that last year with all the issues we had there during the flood. And I have no idea what that might cost, or if we can even legally do it.
Yeah, the park at the end of Tecumseh, I think you guys sandbagged that last week as well. That's definitely one of the areas that would be addressed. The west dead end of Pocahontas, as far as public works goes. The west end of Nishishin, there's some work that's needed there. But definitely the Birchhaven Park, end of Birchhaven, the dead end on Sumac Lagoon is going to need some attention. So there are several areas. Schluter Park, for instance, we haven't even touched on that one yet. This is just the beginning of addressing these areas for flood control. We don't know if this is the new normal, though. It certainly seems like it.
So that's why it kind of seems like we need a bigger plan, but that's just my thought. Anyone else? Any more questions? Okay, let's see if we have another park. Oh, yeah, the community center loading dock.
So this was one, I believe it was, you had moved, the mayor had moved it to 2021. This is just the design work for the loading dock. I think the pictures speak for themselves, although I would say, having been there, that it's worse than the pictures indicate. And I guess I would just add that I think it's likely that the community center is going to stay in use for quite some time, but obviously not until at least after we build a public safety building, and that, I don't know how soon it would be after that, but anyway, I think this is something, it's unsafe and inefficient. It's unsafe for the people who, the users or renters, employees, contractors, anybody that has to go in and out that way.
Alder Thomas.
I think it's a liability in addition.
Yeah.
That's bad.
I mean, I really think it is. I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, I would agree, Alder Thomas. Certainly from a perspective of staff safety and people utilizing the building and using that entrance to load and unload equipment or food, it can be a challenge. We also had several weeks in the polar vortex last year that our contracted trash hauler was not able to get up that incline because of the amount of pitting and ice forming on that path to kind of empty our trash. We'd like to be able to design it in a way which we could put a recycling dumpster there, because right now we take out residential bins and put them on the side of the road, which also decreases drive angles for the buses and vehicles coming in. So there's several areas there. If we're going to be here, it makes sense to at least look at some point in the near future taking care of that.
And I think that door is used as an exit more often than people realize, because if you're working at an event and you're in a kitchen and you don't want to go through the main lounge room, but you're ready to go home, you leave and go out that door. So there are a lot of volunteers, people who work in there, who might be in the kitchen doing things, to skip out that door.
It's very true.
Anyone else? Alder Moore.
Could you explain, either Alderwood or Jake, the difference between the $15,000 that you're asking in terms of the amendment and the $10,000 that you originally requested? There's a $5,000 difference there.
No, I can't. It's apparently my error. Yeah, I'll have to go back. It's a good catch. Double check it in the budget book, but yeah, if it's 10, it looks like it should be 10, not 15.
Mark, do you remember?
5 years, just move it back here.
Oh, if it would, yeah.
What'd you say?
I think we were talking about, I think 10 was going to be enough to move it to
So you added 5?
5, but move it back here.
If it was moved back a year,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah, on page 10 it says 15.
Right, that's where I got it.
Any
Yeah.
other questions?
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at the pictures of it and the listing. It was, that says total project cost 10, so that's where
Oh, yeah,
Picking
I
up
see
Right.
it.
see it.
Under his statement about it.
Right.
Anyone else? So you just think it would cost more, the design, is that the?
We typically, when we go to look at a project, we use like 10% of what we anticipate a construction cost would be. And talking with some of our local contractors, we're like in that neighborhood of, 180 to 100,000. If we're talking about having it, depending on what we have to do with that big stoop, if you're having to remove a lot of that concrete and changing a lot of grade, it might be a little bit more. If it's reusing some of the stuff that's there, maybe a little less. So I think we're okay in that $10,000
So you have
for
75
design.
for the construction cost.
Correct, yeah.
So 10% of that would be 75.
So, yeah, so 10 gives you a little bit of wiggle room there.
So should it be 10 or 15?
I would say 10 would be fine.
Okay.
We're gonna move that to
So we'll
Yeah, we'll adjust that for the next
change.
meeting.
Anyone else have any questions about that? Okay, thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Next item is right-of-way tree replacement. And Dan, I think that would be for you to,
So, my goal is for us, because of the emerald ash borer causing us to lose so many trees, is my fear, I guess, is that we will fall behind. And if we don't try to do a one-for-one, at least have the aspiration of doing the one-for-one replacement, we'll fall behind, we won't ever catch up. And even if we do a one-for-one replacement, we're obviously replacing what were much larger trees for the most part with very small trees. So I guess and I didn't talk to Dan about this yet, but would you have the ability with your staff to do, to plant that many trees and, to do the care, the aftercare that's needed?
The first item, the tree removal, I mean, we're looking at 75 plus trees for that. So there's stump grinding that would need to be done as far as that capital budget item. I'm not sure how long it would take us if it were just our staff to do that. So I don't know if part of that 75,000 could be used to contract stump grinding. Assuming we were able to do all that in the fall or in the spring, early summer, we can probably buy about 72 trees for the 40,000. That's assuming that we have contracted help with digging the hole and doing the planting and basically installing it. By that time, our part-time summer crew, we might have 1 or 2 remaining. So it all depends on what our full-time crew is doing. We do use the truck to go around and water the trees rather than use the bags. We found that the truck, we're able to pull right up and water right from the truck, where it's probably a little more effective than using the bags. I don't know if 2020 is the right time, 2021 perhaps, because we might be caught up on stump grinding by that time, and we'll know a better inventory of where the vacant spaces are for trees to be planted and the species that we could plant there. I'm concerned that with tree removal, stump grinding, preparing the spaces, planting trees, the money is great to have to do all that, but I don't know if we can get all that work done in 1 year's time. And this is just a start, because after this, there's a couple hundred more trees that are going to follow that are in the right-of-way. So
Tom, I'm sorry.
I don't know if I can honestly answer you right now, other than I don't think we're going to get it done.
Alder Thomas.
Well, I have 2 questions. First of all, the trees that are in the right-of-way that you have to take down because they're diseased, are those all trees that the city planted, or are there some that the homeowners planted that are in the right-of-way?
I don't have any information to answer that question. All I know is that they're in the terrace.
Well,
so
I
if
understand
they were
that.
planted by homeowners, I don't even know if our program keeps track of that. We, based on our ordinance, if they're in the right-of-way.
Well, right, we have to take them down. The question is, do we have to replace them? That's just my one thing.
No, there's nothing in the ordinance that says if you take a tree out in the terrace, you have to replace it with another tree. It doesn't state that, but.
I mean, I think we have an obligation if they're, like if you go down, say, Owen Road, you can tell when there's rows of trees that the city most likely planted those. But there are other trees, like on Winnequa, that I know that the city didn't plant because they're not rows. So I was just, I mean, I fully believe we need to replace the ones the city planted. The question is, if somebody plants a tree in there in the right-of-way, do we feel the need or the obligation to replace it? But the other question is, if in next year, Dan's things are slow and Dan is able to do all of this, would we have money in the fund balance to, if he came to us and asked us for money to buy some trees that we could do allocated at that time?
Probably because we're taking, this money's coming out of the fund
Right,
balance, too.
so,
Unless we have some big disaster.
so would that make sense if we could be receptive to doing it if you needed money for that purpose?
Absolutely.
That you could come back to us and ask us?
If we're caught up on work and we don't have diversion throughout the spring and summer, it's just a lot of work, a lot of trees.
I just hesitate relying on Dan to have to come back to us and say, my guys are not busy, let's try and do this. I know your guys are busy and you've always got something to do.
Right.
And so if we really want to do this, it should be in the budget. If we're using fund balance either way, then let's put it in the budget and go from there. If we don't think we can do it, then let's wait till 2021. But I don't want to put this on Dan to come back to us.
And my response to that would be, but I trust Dan it puts pressure on, if we put it in, then we've set the priority and said you need to do it. And then what doesn't he do? Whereas if he finds that he's able, I've never known a department head, when we've said, come back to us if you want more money, I've never thought they felt pressured that they shouldn't ask for it if it became a priority and they had the ability to do it, but that's just.
Dan and then Doug.
Okay. What we have done in the past, if we haven't finished a project in 1 year, and I know Mark can comment on this, but the money in the capital budget can carry over to the following year to complete the work. So technically, you get 2 years, and I know the borrowing requirements for that, but so if we do approve the money for 2020 and we don't get to it in 2020, the money is still good for 2021 and we can get the work done within that 2-year time frame. So if you do the amendment and approve it, it's essentially money for 2 years that we can use to get the job done.
Doug, did you have something?
Yeah, budgets are planning documents, and I think we should put in them what we plan to do or what our priorities are to do. And as Dan says, if we can carry it over, there probably would need to be more money added to it in the 2021 budget, but there might be some carried over.
Right, and then we can address that next year at this time if we are requesting to add to it.
Anyone else? Alder Moore.
I would just say that I fully support the embrace of a one-for-one replacement program, and I think we really need to make a commitment to that. Second, I would say that instead of looking at it as whether or not Dan can do it, I would say perhaps we need to think about whether or not we can do it, which is to say it may be that as a city we decide that it's not something that should be on the shoulders of Public Works to make sure we get one-on-one, and in fact we have a lot of community resources, including many master gardeners and including arborists for the city of Madison and for Obrick that live right here in Monona, and maybe we need to contract it out, but one way or another, I think we need to make a commitment to, because it's not going to get any better, as Dan has pointed out, in 2021. We're going to be seeing this line item of taking down trees and planting trees. This is not the only list of ash borer, trees affected by the ash borer or by oak wilt. So I think we just need to make a commitment to it, and whether it, and whether it falls on the shoulders of Public Works or whether we need to contract it out, we need to make it happen.
Alder Kitzler.
I was just going to echo a sentiment some others just said, but budgets set priorities, and not, I appreciate the pressure that it might put on, but kind of what Alder Coor said, I don't want to expect or put that additional pressure on you to come back and ask for more money. I'd rather have that money there available for you. If you use 30 of the 40,000 in this next year, great. If you use all of it, great. You know your time, and I also appreciate Alder Moore's comment of saying, maybe it's not all on the shoulders of Public Works. Maybe this is something we're able to contract out or something of that sort. But I think I'm supportive of this because I think the further we get behind, again, to Alder Moore's comment, there's going to be more trees every year that need to be cut down. I think the further behind we are, the worse off it'll be, and it will look, and it will just be for the city. So, anyways.
Alder Groupie.
I agree that it should reflect our priorities, and I also think it will reflect the priorities of many of our constituents who have voiced a lot of concern about tree loss in the past several months at various council meetings and in other discussions outside of this context. So I think us showing a commitment to preserving and replacing trees also shows to our constituents that we are adhering to their own goals and their concerns about the future. So,
anyone else? Dan.
I guess I'd like to point out the biggest obstacle to tree removal and tree planting is stump removal. That's where you get bogged down. We can contract tree removal, which we intend to do. They can take trees down pretty quick. It's the next step is then coming in and getting rid of that stump, making space available. If the council's okay, and it sounds like you are, with contracting out assistance for preparing the ground and planting a tree, we can do that in bulk order as well. But the log jam will be removing those stumps, creating space for new trees. That's the biggest obstacle.
Doug.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have any problem with this money being spent for that, because obviously it's part of replacing the tree is you have to remove the stump and prepare the ground. So.
Okay.
Anyone else? Alder Kitzler.
I was just going to say, I'd be interested what that additional cost would be for contracting or bulk contract or whatever you were just kind of mentioning.
Alder Moore contacted me last week, and we got some prices from Jeff, who managed that program for us. He believes that for a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper tree, for around $550, give or take, depending on the species, we can get a tree planted. That's with contracted assistance for a street tree.
Yeah.
So that comes to about $72 or 72 trees for the 40,000. That does not include stump grinding.
Oh, so you weren't talking about bulk for stump grinding?
No,
sorry.
No, we actually used to contract out the stump grinding. We bought our own grinder a few years ago, and we've been doing that in-house because we save a lot of money by doing it in-house.
Okay.
It's quite expensive to contract that out, especially the bigger stumps.
Yeah, and logistically, do you have to plant the tree right where the stump is, or can you plant the tree 5 feet to the left of it and then leave the stump there and then get to it when you need to?
I think Jeff rarely plants a tree where the old tree was. I think they move it. Plus, then they look at, is there power lines overhead, things like that. They're going to look for. You don't want to plant a new tree where a mature tree is going to shade it out.
Yeah.
So there are some things that Jeff looks at before he plants the tree.
Sorry for this very elementary question. So there's potential that we could plant the tree well before the stump gets taken out. So we could just keep planting them, and then when you get to the stump, you get to it.
That would make sense. But I
mean, you don't want a city full of stumps.
I can't say 100% yes, because you just don't know how it's all going to line up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, do you want to?
Dan, sorry, 2 quick questions. If you had to put an estimate on it, how long does it take staff to take care of one stump? We're talking an hour, multiple hours, given the equipment we have?
I would put it at 3 to 4 hours for an average size stump. The larger stumps are going to take a bit longer.
And then, is there any risk of, so if you planted a new tree 5 feet away from an existing stump, if you come back and grind later, that just the vibrations, doing that construction type work within a radius of a certain footage from the new tree, that would harm the new tree? Is that something we need to be concerned about if we were to kind of plant and then come back and grind later?
I don't believe it would. I don't think those vibrations would impact it. I guess depending on the time frame from when you plant the new tree versus when you stump grind, I can't imagine, if it's within a few months that the root system of the new tree is going to be out there yet, so.
Alder Thomas.
But part of the beauty, if you go down Owen Road, part of the beauty is the symmetry of the way the trees are lined up, so you don't want to go too far off to plant a tree. Because if you get a couple of them, Jeff they have a great deal of pride in how they plant those trees. And they like to do it right, and they like to do it symmetrically appropriate. So, they can do anything, but it's not quite so easy as to plant a tree and take the stump out later.
Anyone else?
Alder Groupie and I are volunteering for a stump removal service. We would like to get trained in
We're
this.
tough as nails. We got this.
If it's okay
They
with the-
volunteered for running the stump grinder.
You ever run a stump grinder?
Huh?
Not an easy,
Quick
it's
one.
not an easy
Exactly.
task.
All right, any other comments? Okay, thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Next item, I guess, Mark, do you want to come up to, do we have any questions about the bus shelter and why we need to be doing the bus shelter?
He wants me to do it. So this is actually, so the amendment, as you can see, is to add $73 for a bus shelter at a Madison Metro bus stop near Walmart. And this kind of came up because as part of my being on the MPO board, I was aware of a study that the board had paid for with Metro on bus stop amenities throughout their system. And in looking at it, realized there were a couple of our stops in the city that didn't have the recommended facilities. So I got a hold of Chuck Camp, who's the director of Madison Metro, and to my surprise found out that it's actually not their responsibility if it's in a suburban community. It's the responsibility of the suburban community to provide those facilities.
For Madison Metro.
For Madison Metro. So this is for the identified bus stop 3772, and it's a pretty busy stop, about 44 riders per weekday and 34 per day on weekends. And the cost that I provide, based the amendment on, were based on the cost that he provided, and then I ballparked what I thought a garbage can would cost based on $500. That maybe, is that too low? Jake might know. But trash can, it's going to be someplace where the public is.
500 each?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, about, okay. So.
And who's going to empty the trash
Not
cans?
gold-plated.
We are already responsible for cleaning those bus stops. That's something I learned when I was on mass transit, right? Even though they're Madison, does Public Works clean them? Is that and how many are there actually?
I think there's only one trash can there. And I think it was a park provided can, so it's a pretty good condition can.
Are there just two bus stops? Metro bus stops?
There's one northbound and southbound at Royal.
Okay.
We maintain the southbound. We started that probably 5 or 6 years ago, I believe. Our guys empty the trash. We check it twice a week. We mow around the current pad, and we do snow removal there. So I think if we add the shelter, there's not that much more work for us to do by adding that shelter. So, I mean, we would just keep doing our job as normal.
And northbound doesn't get nearly as much use, does it? I did actually see where that is today. It's right alongside.
Yeah, it gets significantly less, enough that, I mean, it's recommended to have a bench placed there. I didn't include that in this amendment. I don't know how much that would cost.
Could you move the bench that's currently on the other side over there? Because does the shelter include some kind of don't those have a built-in bench?
Yeah. I think the estimate that they provided, that does include a bench in there.
Right.
Our guys could make the pad on on the northbound lane and move the bench over there.
It looked like there might be a little pad there, but maybe it was just like a little sidewalk.
I think it's
I'm
like a
not sure.
standing pad. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Elder Kitzler.
So I think you just answered my question. I was gonna ask if we can pour the 12 by 12 slab concrete.
We could do it for cheaper than what's listed here.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. Yeah. I don't know, so I don't know if we can lessen this by having that done in-house.
I mean, if you could actually, if the current trash cans that are there are good enough for you, you could take that out as well.
And then, does the Metro Transit labor, do they have to install it, or is that something that, again, not to put everything on you guys?
Well, our guys could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
So I'm just looking for.
I just don't know what the cost of their labor is.
Does this include their labor?
Right, yes.
And it might be something where they install these and this group of people, that's what they do, and they can do it within like a couple hours, but.
Right.
But I would imagine it's not too hard, well, I'm not gonna say too hard.
You could probably cut the 1,000 in half for just the concrete material, or for just concrete. And probably take the 500 out, unless you want to put a can on the northbound lane. We don't have one over there, I don't believe.
Elder Moore.
I would just say that I'm in support of this amendment because I think it's a part of offering, continuing to offer viable transit alternatives, and we need to be supportive of those people that are taking the bus and are choosing the bus, and make it easier for people to choose the bus by having shelter when they're waiting for it.
Anyone else?
Just to
Elder Groupie.
I do think if there's an area that doesn't have a trash can, that would be very valuable, just because I know that is an area that tends to have a lot of litter.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Oops, sorry. Not that people always separate, but if we put a trash can, should we be putting a recycle bin as well?
Hey, yes.
I mean, that would add cost, but I'm just plain devil's advocate of.
I guess my recommendation would probably keep the 7,300 that you're asking for. And then if there's a balance, then I'm sure it can be used elsewhere.
Properly moved to undesignated reserve.
Right, or maybe on trees.
Right.
Anything else?
Thank you,
Okay.
Alderwood, for your work on this.
Sorry?
Just thanking Alderwood for his work on this.
I guess, thank you, Dan and Mark. Elder Moore.
No, sorry, I was just going to say one more thing overall about the budget, assuming that we're moving on from the budget?
Well, we've got one more.
Okay, then go ahead and do one more.
Okay. The last is a amendment to apply money from the fund balance to cover these
Right.
amendments. So, any questions about that? And Mark, we're going to have some other amendments. Are you going to be bringing an amendment about the meters?
Yeah.
Which is going to make a big difference, although it comes out of the utility budget.
I'm waiting for a response back from the PSC on that one. Basically, right now, we're looking at, gonna call into the PSC, because we have to do a rate case for the water utilities, especially to do these meters, because one, we're gonna change from cubic units to gallons, we're gonna go to monthly billings, and just the cost in general. In calls, in general, we'll make an increase for the water rates. So one of the things is when you do a PSC, or do a water rate case, they really only let you use 1 year worth of data of capital projects. You can't just estimate 2021, 2022, 2023. So I got to call into them, or working with them right now, is will they let us capture the water meter upgrades if you do it in 2021, and I haven't got a response back yet. More likely, I think they're leaning towards we have to do it all in 1 year to capture all that cost in the water rate case. So it's part of your rate base. So that would mean we have to move all that cost up to 2020.
Pretty much doubles it, right?
It doubles what it was. We basically split it in
700
half.
something or 6
Yeah.
something. So that's the big thing that we still have coming that we'll know about. Thank you.
Other than that, I haven't seen any other amendments.
Okay. Alderman Moore, did you have? what was
Yeah,
your
I just,
question?
I wanted to, especially since I wasn't here during the committee of the whole meetings, I wanted to extend my thanks to the staff and to the mayor for pulling this all together, and wanted to particularly shout out those items that are related to sustainability. We have in this capital budget, we have continued major investments in stormwater treatment control and sewer infrastructure. We have another hybrid police cruiser. We have LED and lighting control upgrades at Public Works, HVAC upgrades, the library, city hall, and community center, anti-idling technology pilot, one-to-one tree replacements with both Public Works and Park and Rec, lighting upgrades at Ahuska, upgrades to half of the city's water meters to smart metering for residents, flood restoration, the bus shelter, and McKenna Road reconstruction, which may include sidewalks. And I'm sure there may be a few that I've missed, but I think that overall this budget represents a significant dent, an important dent in what is obviously a race against time. And certainly reflects our commitment to sustainability. So I just want to thank all of the staff for continuing to always look at those alternatives and for building so much of it into this budget overall. And hopefully I'll come up with a percentage by of the overall capital budget by the next meeting. Yes.
Thank you. Alder Thomas.
I just wanted to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is the safety building. And the reason, and when if I sound tight about the budget, it is because that building is important to not only our safety departments, but having that built is important to our rec department, it's important to our senior center, it is critical to every department in this city, and the sooner we can save the funds and get that done, the better we will all be, and the better our department heads will be, and you won't have broken furniture, and you won't have crowded spaces, and you won't be competing for things, and you're smiling, but it is, so we need to work diligently and be frugal so we can get at that and build a first-class building. And we have our other facilities.
I agree, and I appreciate the staff, I know, made a real effort to try to keep capital budget requests low this year, and I appreciate that, because...
Yes, thank you.
And although it doesn't seem like it, Brian and I are working on public safety building, and hopefully we'll have something to report to the council, probably in closed session within the next meeting or two, I think, so. So anything else? Okay, I guess it's time for reports then.
Brian's presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brian.
Since I made him come.
How could I forget that? Ryan, we are, at least I think this is what this is, we're going to start having the department heads, as they did a few years ago when Mayor Miller was here.
I figure I could be first, and then from here on out, you can say do like he did or don't do like he did.
Exactly. They'll be giving a little report on the status of their department, I think probably once a month. Just so everybody can hear what other departments are doing. So you have a PowerPoint or something?
Yeah, so hopefully this will show up unless they have to switch over.
I just got to see Jake is staying for this. Hear about the library.
Everyone needs a heckler.
As he was putting his headphones on.
Yeah. All right, so just a short, since it's been somewhat of a long meeting, on the Monona Public Library, the library department, and what we do. Just a few things here. So the mission statement, which was passed by the board, I believe, a year ago, and we didn't have a mission statement for a few years prior to this. Our mission statement is: the Monona Public Library enriches lives by building community connections, fostering imagination, and opening up a world of ideas. Everything we do goes towards that mission statement. Something else to point out, just the literacy. So there's two definitions of literacy. One is just basically learning how to read and write, but the other literacy, as things advance, is knowledge and competence in a specific area. The library deals in literacy of all kinds. That's something that we're focused on. Finally, on this slide, I'd just like to point out a quote from a book, Palaces for the People, How Social Infrastructure Can Help Fight Inequality, Polarization, and the Decline of Civic Life by Eric Kleinenberg. Side note, excellent book. I highly recommend it. After all, the root of the word library, liber, means both book and free. Libraries stand for and exemplify something that needs defending. The public institutions that, even in an age of atomization and inequality, serve as bedrocks of civil society. Libraries are the kinds of places where ordinary people with different backgrounds, passions, and interests can take part in a living democratic culture. Who we are, some photos of the wonderful staff that work at the library. Unfortunately, I cannot squeeze all of the staff onto the slide. I omitted myself, thank goodness. But it is a staff that is dedicated to providing the best service that we can provide for our patrons that come to this building and also going outside of the building. And if you haven't met every face on this slide, I highly recommend that you do, because I am extremely fortunate that they are working here, and they definitely help me every single day provide what we can to the city. So what do we provide? We provide access for everyone, and that's important to acknowledge with public libraries. Anyone that comes to this building, we will provide this service to. Books, both physical and digital, with digital kind of increasing slowly but surely, especially actually right now in the e-audiobook phase. So there is an app called Libby that the state purchases ebooks into. If you haven't downloaded it yet, I highly recommend it. You can get access to ebooks or e-audiobooks on, and will change your commute if you do have long commutes. Magazines, newspapers, story times for children, children's programs, teen programs, adult programs, access to public computers for those that can't afford it, free Wi-Fi, databases, genealogy research, which also goes into databases. So we have a subscription to Ancestry.com if you want to use that service. You have to come to the library to use it, but it is free. Technology tools, some of which that we will be sharing with the public shortly, is the capability to take any VHS tapes that you may still have, maybe some home recordings, and digitize it, make it a digital file so you can share with your families. Also some photo and document scanners if you want to use any of your own personal archiving. Printing, scanning, and of course community building. Just some of the partners that we work with: Historic Blooming Grove Historical Society, MG21 Charter School, the Monona Grove School District, Playtime Productions, MESBA, Starbucks, the Parks and Rec Department, Senior Center, Food Fight, and other area libraries. It's something that I really strongly urge both my board and staff that libraries are not a competitive business. We do not compete with one another. In fact, we work and partner with one another to offer, pool services together to offer better programs or better services. And being in the Madison metro area, it actually provides us a better opportunity to do this, since we are surrounded by so many other wonderful libraries, such as the Madison Libraries, the Sun Prairie Library, McFarland, etc. Just some example of some of the programs that we have done this year and the last couple of years. So Seasonal Chef, which is a very popular program where we partner with local restaurants where the chefs come in and do almost like a cooking program for people. Usually fills up the forum room every single time. Eco Action Tuesdays focus on sustainability that I think started before Monona has openly supported sustainability, and that's been going on for a few years now. History Club, which is a partnership with the Historic Blooming Grove Historical Society, doing local history programs. Trending Now, which was looking at just what are we talking about now. So the first program with this was on information literacy and how you can suss out news, especially social media. We had a professor from the UW come, and that was another one that filled up the forum room. It's a current topic. 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, Telebration, which is a celebration of stories. Again, story time. We had a teenage job fair where teenagers could come and practice their interviewing skills with the panel. We've had several musical concerts here, of course, local author visits, and then Story Jam, which is our version of The Moth, so being able to share your own story. Something I would like to just highlight here. So if you can see the graph, we've seen an uptick in visits. I attribute this to really two things. One is the support that the city has shown to the library, and then also the staff that has worked at the library. Talking with patrons when they come and visit the library, I always ask them, why are you here? Because often I see people from Madison, from McFarland, from Verona, from Wanakee, from all over. And they say, oh, I love Karen's story time. I come here. Or I liked when Tony worked here. I love Tony's recommendations. It's the staff build a one-on-one connection with each person that comes here, and they come back for that connection. So as you can see, in 2008, we had 135,707 visits. I'll just jump ahead to 2018. We had 212,486 visits. So we are seeing an increase in visits each year since roughly 2013. Just to break it down a little more, so this year, on average, we're seeing 2,763 more visits per month than the previous year. If the math holds out, it'll be 33,000 more visits than in 2018. Staff are seeing this. It's both a great thing, but also they're tired. We are seeing more people at the desk. We're also seeing an uptick in physical items that are checking out, which is kind of bucking the national trend where physical circulation is either still going downward slightly or plateauing. Ours are actually up, I think, roughly by 6,000 physical items so far this year. And where are we going? We just completed a strategic plan to help prioritize and highlight areas of service that we believe we should focus on the next 3 to 5 years. And part of that, we did a community survey, and we also did community conversations that we actually held in this room, where we had roughly, I believe, 12 people come, and this was facilitated by Wills, who did the strategic plan, on what they want to see in the library and the community. With the community survey, we had 504 respondents, 62% of which were Monona residents, and 35% of those 504 frequent the Monona Public Library weekly. In terms of reaching out to the community, 51% say that they get library news both by signage in the library and out in the community, because we do try to post signs out in businesses if they give us permission, and also the library website. 91% say they are satisfied with getting materials, and 80% are satisfied getting help from a librarian. Quick point of note, maybe no one else cares about this, but in the library profession, there's this controversy about who is a librarian. Whenever I say librarian, I mean library staff member. It does not mean someone with a degree. So with the community survey, they asked, do you strongly agree, or do you agree, or no opinion, disagree, or strongly disagree with the following? And then they averaged it out. So if everything was strongly agree, it would be 2. If everything was strongly disagree, it'd be -2. The library is important for the community. It was 1.88 out of 2. This is out of all the respondents. If the library is important to me and or my family, 1.78 out of 2. The library enhances my and or my family's quality of life, 1.71 out of 2. And the library is a key resource in education and literacy in our community, 1.66 out of 2. Just something that I feel rather proud of what my staff has accomplished to get these results. The person that did this strategic plan has done, I would say, roughly 20 to 20 plus strategic plans in libraries in the state of Wisconsin, and has never seen those first 2 results at the same time. Usually one is high and the other is relatively low. She's just wanted to point out to me that she's never seen both libraries important for the community and the libraries important to me and or my family. So I think that speaks a lot to the staff here, and again to the resources that we have been provided by the city. So what are we going to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years? 4 areas, and it looks kind of like, well, aren't we already doing that? Yes and no. We do believe we can improve things. So for services, we did get feedback that though the programs that we provide people like, they would like to see different types, different topics of programs. So we're looking at that. And then also, how can we make our collections more accessible and inviting? Though our circulation is going up, it could go up even more. Spaces. This is actually something that was really highlighted during the strategic plan. And part of the spaces is this entire lower level. When people walk into the library from the parking lot, which is considered the main entrance, we heard feedback that it doesn't really feel like a library. And not only that, but when you walk in, you're a little confused on what to do. And this is even after at this point, not so new stairway that was put in, where prior to that, I assume, since I was not here, it was even worse because the stairway was hidden. And so we're looking to see how we can make this space not only more accommodating to people, but also more library-like, and I interpret that as basically more welcoming, but also provide library services down here, not just upstairs. I should say services beyond just the rooms that we have, and also seating and Wi-Fi and vending that people can do. Then partnerships and relationships, so increase and or improve our partnerships with schools, city departments, and the local organizations and businesses. And telling our story, you could look at that as basically marketing. How can we make people more aware of what we offer? Many people believe libraries offer books. This is true, but then there's a full stop there. And though people that come to our programs and they take advantage of our Wi-Fi and our computers and our databases and our technology and our services, there are still people that don't quite know everything we do. The best example are databases. Databases have been the bane of libraries' existence since anyone can remember, because while they are perfect for those in the information field, the average person's like, I don't know what that is, and I don't really want to know because it sounds boring. That's not entirely untrue, but they are extremely useful, and we need to do a better job of making people aware of what you all can do when you're in the building. And I just want to highlight some upcoming projects that's happening. So the upper level carpets will be happening in the first couple weeks of December. During that time, the entire upper level will be closed to the public and staff, and we will be turning the lower level into kind of a mini library where like holds will be available. The children's room will be in the forum room. We'll still have library services, but it will be limited. Lower level bathrooms will be remodeled. We'll hopefully get the new self-checkout machines, and those will happen in probably January, February of 2020. The implementation of the strategic plan, which part of this speaks to, but also just long range, will be focusing on that. A new website. Assessing and remodeling the lower level, which I already spoke to. Increasing outreach out in the community, which will take staff time, and we need to figure out how we can both get out into the community while still providing the what we consider high level of service in the building. Strengthening partnerships with the school, city departments, and local businesses. That's both by partnering programs in the building and also getting outside the building. And then completing the One Community, Many Voices initiative, which I had not mentioned prior up to this point in the program because I was running out of slides. But if you recall, I would like the library to be seen as a platform for the community's voice, and that's what the One Community, Many Voices project is. Anyone can be interviewed, and we capture everyone's story. And collectively, that is capturing a snapshot of Monona at this point in time, and it's available for anyone of all ages, and you don't necessarily have to live here. You could work here. You could have lived here and moved away. Currently, we are at about 45 or 50 interviews, and they keep coming and coming. The goal still is of 100 by the end of this year, and after this year, we'll keep collecting them. And eventually they will, about 23 are available on our website right now, and we'll just keep putting them up there. And I think in the end, when people start going through it, and you see people talking about like the fall festival from like 23 different perspectives, or why they moved to Monona, it'll be a lot of fun. And not only that, but generations will be able to access this and see why their families moved to Monona. And that's it. That's what I would like to share about the library.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Does anybody have any questions? Nancy and then Andrew?
This might be a silly question, but how do you count visits? Like, is there a counter at the door?
Yes, there is. So the counters we currently have, which I would like to update sometime in the near future, is a laser beam. So people walk through, they break the beam that's registered.
So like when Mary and Joan are struggling locking the door after these meetings, there's like 6 or 7 visits just...
No, usually there's something built in where like that, it has like a fraction of a second where it won't count that, which actually in the end it kind of evens out, because if a group of students comes in, which we have with both Playtime and Paper Moon coming here, if a mob of kids come in at the same time, it's not going to be counting them individually. Okay. You're actually going to be losing counts. What we do is we record the counts each day, and then of course we divide by 2. Because hopefully if you come in the building, you're leaving.
So far, anyway.
Alder Kitzler.
In a few of your areas, like the relationships or services, so you're looking for new programs, I'd encourage you to reach out to UW and build a relationship with them. I know there's a lot of faculty that like to travel and come and visit and talk. I know I had a conversation with Tony, and after the election, she got Mike Wagner, a faculty member, to come here and talk, and it was packed. So
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know the Senior Center does Scholarly Scoop, and they partner with UW Whitewater. But again, I think with UW-Madison across the lake, it's such a robust amount of information and access to individuals that communities don't have access to. That we
I agree, and we've gone through the Speakers Bureau of UW to get some of those speakers, especially with Trending Now.
Yeah.
I think the History Club may have used one or two. Jenna, who's our current Adult Services librarian, has reached out to them already. And we can utilize them more as people that are experts, and they're right across the lake, that it's so easy to have them come over if we book them ahead of time, because a lot of them are very popular.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was going to say is, pie in the sky dreaming, when you look at remodeling the first floor, I know now I'm blanking on it, but the cooking exhibits that happen in the other room. The whole
Seasonal chef?
Yeah, seasonal chef. The whole cooking situation could be so much better if there was good equipment
Kitchen?
or like a mirror type of situation. I know there's a lot of people, even a table with one of those mirrors that kind of showed down. I know there's a lot of seniors that.
If that's your pie in the sky,
well,
I don't know.
It'd be nice to work that out.
Where people can come and actually cook.
That would be perfect too. It's just, you see these, professional cooks come in there and struggle with these little conventional irons.
We've thought about the angled mirror, and we've also thought about kind of the high-tech version of that, of having a camera that's able to point down and then having a projector that then projects what it's pointing down. Either way, so people can actually see, rather than the cooks trying to lift a heavy vat of boiling water and showing people what's happening.
Alder Thomas.
So this is my pie in the sky. My pie in the sky says when we build a public safety building, we build a city council building room in it and have the meetings there like they do in many communities, and we give this back to the library.
I'd certainly like to give the court back to the City Hall, anyway. All right, anyone else?
So that's my pie in the sky.
Thank you.
Doug and then Alder Moore.
I just wanted to make a comment while you were talking. I went to the library's website and then followed that to the online resources available that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. Consumer Reports is one, but there's archives of Wisconsin newspapers going back to the 1800s. There's many, many databases. It's pretty remarkable, and one thing you do have to have, I think, to access them is a library card.
Yes.
So get a library card if you don't, but have one. But yeah, I think a lot of people, you'd mentioned this, I think, that publicizing more what's available so that people know that,
I don't know if, the Alder Moore have something to say, and I don't know if they can switch this back, because I did want to share one other thing real quick. But Alder Moore, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say two things. One is my pie in the sky would be a real coffee shop, and I have pictures from another library of a small coffee shop that would fit perfectly. And the second thing is you could always consider going low tech on the cooking, because people may not know that the by far the biggest attended event in all of Cornucopia, which is 30,000 paddlers every year at the Alliance Center, is what we call Iron Chef, where 3 chefs come in from Madison and cook on a camp stove. So,
great, thank you. I just really quickly want to highlight a couple things. So the South Central Library System has someone that's dedicated to data, which is awesome. And she's actually made some data dashboards to better share visually, infographic if you will, data of all the libraries in the system. So this is just a snapshot of the Monona Public Library. But she has roughly made about, I think, 40 different data dashboards. One thing that I've shared with staff and I think they should be proud of is, so library services per capita. You'll see Monona Public Library is second in the 5 counties, that make up the South Central Library System, which is roughly 51 public libraries. We are second in circulation per capita. But
Who's
what-
first?
Is Verona Public Library. They are a circulation powerhouse. I don't know what's going on over there, but they circ items.
Epic.
Brian.
So, I mean, I got all my stuff here.
Thank you, keep it up.
They don't divide it by 2.
But something that I've been sharing with staff often and then other library directors is visits per capita. So this is still the 5 counties that make up South Central Library System. We are number 1 by almost 8. I don't know what the percentage is, but by a lot. But what if you go statewide?
I'm guessing we're in the top screen.
No, not circulation.
Statewide.
No. We are experiencing technical difficulties.
Operator error.
No, never. We're first.
Wow.
We are first in visits per capita in the state.
Where's the case Stecker Library?
Oh, like John DeBacher could tell you, but
Yeah.
unfortunately I can't. So I do think it's something that the community should be proud of, that we are a library that is surrounded by the city of Madison and by other libraries that are exceptional. And by all means, you should visit every library in the area that you can, especially the new Wanakee Library. It is a beautiful building. The new Penny's going to be opening up. We should all visit. It's going to be a beautiful building. But it's still something to be proud of that Monona Library is the number 1 in visits per capita.
Yeah, it's amazing.
All right, that's it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any other questions for Ryan? Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Pressure's on.
Yeah.
Pressure's on.
All right. Now we're on to reports. Jake or Ryan, did you have any reports? Well, you just gave a report.
Yeah.
Jake, did you want to report anything while you're here?
That's the score.
No. All right. Okay, well then we will start with Alder Thomas.
No report.
Okay. Alder Tour.
I just wanted to shout out to Jake while he's still here. The park event yesterday was absolutely fantastic. I particularly appreciated the kids event because there's no equipment at the new park. It was a tough sell to get them to go, but so thanks.
That bike repair station
Well,
was
that
a lot of fun.
got them out the door. Yeah. So, but it was excellent. So I think it was kudos to you.
Just update from the MPO meeting last week. The Atwood Avenue project is not in the 2020-2025 federal funding cycle. That, it was basically the highest scored project that didn't make the cut, so it was right there, but just didn't work out. But, things could change with that. But right now, something would have to happen with the other projects to free up, because it's an expensive project. The other thing is what do they call it? The dynamic part-time, the project where you'd be able to drive on the inside shoulders during more or less morning and afternoon rush hours, seems very likely to happen. Possibly by 2021, probably more likely, not quite that fast. But.
Alder Kitzler.
Tourism is meeting tomorrow. We had 10 applications for a total of about $108,000 or so. And we have $48,000 to give away, so we have a tall task. But we're not going to make the final decision tomorrow since we have so many applications. We're going to talk to each individual applicant and ask them questions, and then we're setting up a meeting later on in October to actually make the final decisions. We didn't quite expect the popularity of number of applicants, so I think that's a good thing.
Alder Moore?
Just want to echo Alder Kerr's comments. I thought the event yesterday was great, and as somebody who was involved as the chair of the ad hoc committee, I want to thank the ad hoc committee and the park rec board and everybody that was thanked yesterday by the mayor and former mayor. Really looking, it's great new resource. All the comments I certainly got from people there were super positive, and I think people are really excited about it.
To the best of my knowledge, we are having a transit committee meeting on Wednesday night. So always a riveting time if you would like to attend.
All right.
6:30 p.m.
City clerk,
No report?
city administrator?
Just one item. Next week, Monday, the mayor and I will be representing the city of Monona. We have a couple of staff members from the White House office that's affiliated with the Opportunity Zone program. It's a long story, but it's a program that allows people to take capital gains and invest them in certain sectors across the nation that are in these special opportunity zones, basically to help reinvest in certain neighborhoods. Monona does have a couple of properties that fall in Opportunity Zone number 2 for the city of Madison, which covers parts of Monona, parts of Fitchburg and Madison. Specifically for us, the WPS campus and then the Southtown Mall area and then the industrial park further to the south are in Opportunity Zone number 2. So as part of this visit from the White House staff, they're going to be meeting with the kind of local mayors from Fitchburg, Monona, Madison, and Sun Prairie, and then they're going to do a bus tour of the area, and we'll take a quick spin through the Broadway corridor as we're going elsewhere, but they will get a chance to kind of see the Southtown Mall area. So that'll be good to get our name out there as it relates to that.
Okay, I've got a couple things. First of all, thank you, Alder Kitzler, for running the meeting on September 16th. I know it's been a long time ago, but I just watched it today, so it's very fresh in my mind. Anyway, I appreciate your stepping in for me. I don't think this has been announced, but we learned about it a little while ago that but I've seen questions come up. The dredging on the Yahara has been postponed to next spring. I don't know if everyone's aware of that, but primarily because by the time they got going, they couldn't find contractors to bid on the job, which makes sense since they didn't really start going till late spring. So the idea is that they will be doing it next spring, is the plan. Thanks to the staff for all the work they did on helping out with the flooding down in Belle Isle. This past week there was a couple of spots that were pretty bad, and we had some staff down there. We did bring in one of the sandbagging machines, and we had some of the public works crew were running that periodically. And when we had enough help from the neighborhood for bagging, and Leah was putting out periodic press releases and updates. So we'll keep people informed. I think I saw on the Lake Levels website today that John Reimer is predicting it might go down 3/4 of an inch tomorrow, which I find pretty impressive. Anyway, so keep praying for dry weather. We lost a community member a couple of weeks ago, Ann Duran. I just wanted to mention that, who was a huge library volunteer she was one of the founding members of the Friends of the Library and very involved in the children's collection here and the children's sale at the annual Friends book sale and everything. So she will be missed. She really gave a lot to the community. Again, Jake, kudos on the grand opening. It was great. I participated in the Justice for a Cure kickoff with Chief Ostrenga and quite a few representatives from area law enforcement agencies. They had a nice ceremony, and Toya, our court clerk, sang on Friday. I guess finally, operating committee of the whole meetings are coming up October 16th and 23rd. Do we know? I think the budget should be in your mailboxes later this week.
Yeah, for sure by Friday, but maybe a day earlier than that, depending on how things shake out.
But Leah will send out an email when they're ready. So, I have 2 appointments: county mileage to the Public Safety Committee, effective immediately through April 2020, and Ann Timon to the Police and Fire Commission, also effective immediately through April 2020. They're both completing terms.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.